Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FTR's, but hey, it's something. Now, if you notice my voice is different in this episode, it's because I am again sick. I don't know if it's the Rona or what, but I know I am sick, and I didn't test myself, but technically, I felt literally the exact same symptoms that I felt when I had the Rona, so it doesn't seem as bad as the last one, so either way, this seems to be going better. Also, since this has been a little bit hectic, I've actually had little time to actually prepare for this episode. I mean, there aren't that many stories, and I had to change who the shout-out was for at the last second because I planned for it to be someone else, but I didn't actually get to look into their content before I came to do the episode, so instead, this episode is going to shout out Alex Kawa, who I technically shouldn't shout out because he's already been shouted out by a much larger creator, and you can tell that hasn't quite worked out since he's still smaller than me. Alex Kawa essentially just posts a bunch of mini video essays. The main series that he seems to do something called Kawa's Mind. It's basically just something where he rambles about whatever. You know, Joe Rogan says people didn't want to work during COVID. Left-wing versus right-wing violence in manufacturing consent. A nationwide teacher strike is the only way to get gun reform passed. New domestic terrorism laws after Buffalo shooting. You know, it's usually done with, camera recording him and very minimal editing. You know, it's not that he doesn't do any editing. It's just that, like I said, pretty minimal. You know, add a clip here and there to explain his point. You know, that sort of thing. If that kind of content's your thing, you know where to find him. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, we're going to be telling the story of the Mexican elections, because those just happened last Sunday. For those who don't know, Mexico was holding some more elections. They weren't the midterms. You know, the midterms had 12 or so governorships up for grabs. These were the off years. You know, the ones where you don't have that many things up for grabs. Really, all that was available were 6 governorships. Aguascalientes, Durango, Hidalgo, Oaxaca, Quintana Roo, and Tamaulipas. On election night, Morena took over 4 of the governorships. The PRI had 1, and the National Action Party had another. And the 2 that were lost were actually very obviously expected to not go to Morena, as those were elections that were just very in non-Morena safe areas. This election was also notable because this marks with this election, the PRD has officially been electorally wiped out. They no longer hold a single governorship, to which I say, well, maybe you shouldn't have literally sold out every single one of your principles. Then maybe you still have a governorship. This election is also notable because this is the last election to be held before the 2024 presidential contest. And this is not only proven that Morena is still strong and well, it shows that the opposition isn't in a strong enough seat yet to replace him. Maybe that will change in the next 2 years, we don't know, but it's clear that as of now, Morena seems to be very much poised to continue their tenure in the presidential palace. Jumping across the border, in fact, very much far from the border, we're going to be talking about some smaller third-party drama. That's right, third parties. Remember when I used to talk about those? Well, this is part of the never-ending drama with the 2 pro-legalization parties in Minnesota. For those who don't know, Minnesota has 2 marijuana legalization parties, the Legal Marijuana Now Party and the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party. And both of them have had some issues as of recently, because it turns out that recently both of these parties have had people from the GOP plant themselves in and become part of this big plan to try and help the Republicans in that area. The 2 biggest examples from each party were when the Legal Marijuana Now Party had a candidate by the name of Adam Weeks die, and then they pretty much demanded that Weeks remain on the ballot, even though there was literally no point for him to be on the ballot, because Weeks was recruited by the GOP to split the vote in Minnesota District 2, I believe. And in the Grassroots Party, in Minnesota District 7, a Republican National Committee member literally went up to a blind and disabled veteran and told him, hey, can I, file you to run in the, Grassroots Legalized Cannabis primary? He's like, yeah, sure, you're a member of the party, right? And I'm like, yeah, of course I am. They literally used a blind, disabled veteran for their political ambitions, which is, I guess, standard for the GOP. But then, recently, there's been some drama with the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party this time around. You see, in order to circumvent this, some members of the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party and some Democrats in Minnesota have been pressuring the party to change its name. The two biggest names that have been proposed are the Constitutional Liberty Party and the Marijuana Activists with Governing Aspirations, or for short, MAGA. Yeah, literally, they decided that they were going to circumvent this and name the party something that is super far to the right in order to make it seem like, oh yeah, we're a conservative party. Basically overcorrect in the literal, completely opposite direction. In my viewpoint, here's what they should probably do. Maybe vet your candidates. I mean, that's a suggestion. Maybe actually do that. That's really all you need to do. Grassroots Party and Legal Marijuana Party, all you really gotta do is, vet your candidates, and you really have a simple solution. Speaking of things with simple solutions, let's go on to something that's not. The update on Texas. Jessica Cisneros has officially requested a recount in her runoff against Cuellar. See, the fact that she requested a recount makes me think that maybe something is there. You see, I don't know. I could be wrong. I could just be making myself feel like that there's hope. But maybe there's a shot. We'll have to wait and see. Speaking of things we don't have to wait and see about, actually that's a terrible segue because the first thing I have to say is something that we will have to wait and see about. I'm going to be talking about all of the election results that have happened up to this point, mostly from the 7th, but also I have to give a brief mention to one that is happening right now, and that is the Alaska election. Sadly, as of the time I'm recording this, I don't have the results of the Alaska election, and I know a lot of people are paying attention to this race because of, Santa Claus is running, but, I mean, that's really the only reason to pay attention to the race. There's a guy called Santa running in the race, and he's, a super socialist guy. That's pretty cool. But other than that, there's really not much else to say. I mean, if he makes it in the runoff, that'll be interesting, but, I mean, it's very unlikely he'd win. But, I mean, hey, we've hedged our bets on old men before. Now let's move on to the elections that happened on the 7th, and the media keeps trying to spin it as, this is a super negative thing. And while, yes, there are some negative things that happened, let's look over them all. First, in the Iowa Senate seat, unfortunately, progressive Glenn Hurst lost, but an interesting thing that happened was that the Democrat favorite to win the seat, Abby Finneker, the person who was a member of Congress, she actually lost the race as well. She got second, and it was really weird that happened. Maybe Cherry Beasley really was, the last person who had, the Democratic Party line up behind her. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. And still in Iowa, while J.D. Schulten didn't run in Iowa District 4, he ran for he's the only candidate running in a state house seat, thus guaranteeing that he's going to win. There's actually a progressive running in Iowa District 4 named Ryan Melton. He also ran unopposed. That's interesting. In Montana District 1, sadly, Thomas Winter lost. Now moving on to New Jersey, David Ocampo Grajales also lost. And I'm going to have to say this, maybe, just maybe, if Hector Osegura ran, he might have actually stood a chance. Sheila McCormick actually did it. Doyle Canning sadly couldn't do it. But, I mean, it's possible that Hector Osegura could have pulled through. But, I mean, he was running against Bob Menendez's son, so maybe was a bit of too big of a leap to jump. In New Jersey District 10, Imani Oakley also lost. It was kind of expected, but it seems that a lot of people are betting that she's going to make a political comeback at one point. Maybe she'll run against one of the senators. Maybe she'll run for that seat again. Maybe she'll run in like a township or something. Maybe like something will happen. She's probably going to run again for the future. But unfortunately, this one just didn't work out. Now moving on to California. California seemed to be the thing that many people like pointed to as like, this is the reason why we didn't do well. The specific thing that seems to have been incredibly cited is the San Francisco District Attorney race, where a progressive by the name of Chesa Boudin lost, meaning that he was recalled from his office. And I don't know much about him, but it did seem like there were a lot of people, like the progressives did really want him to stay in office. And from the small amount of things I did read, he did have like a somewhat progressive, like judicial model. So it stinks that he had to go, but there are a lot of other things that could have went wrong. The Los Angeles mayoral race also seemed to be interesting because it's a race now between Karen Bass and Richard Caruso is his name. Caruso is the candidate. I don't know if his first name is Richard or not, but he was a former Republican who turned to a Democrat who is essentially running as like a super conservative Democrat. So it's like, and he actually won the race. Like he didn't win outright, but he was in first place, so he has the advantage going in. Another loss that I expected was in the California gubernatorial race. Luis Rodriguez lost as well. And while we're at it, I'll just mention the leftist unity slate that was pushed by the California Peace and Freedom Party and the California Green Party. That didn't work out either. Their candidate for Senate, John Parker, got 1%. I guess going on the Russian state media trip didn't help him at all. Here's another race that seemed to turn to a little bit of a shit show. California District 11, Nancy Pelosi's seat. You see, in California District 11, Shahid Buttar was running against her again, but the thing is, Shahid Buttar has actually been, I don't know if it's like specifically because of the sexual assault allegations, or if it's like other things. I think it's like a mix of that and the fact that Shahid is kind of like aligned with some like unsavory figures on the left. So many people weren't really supporting Shahid Buttar. In fact, there was actually a progressive who was like openly running an anti-Shahid Buttar candidacy. Well, unfortunately, neither of them actually made it to the second round, and Pelosi will be facing off against a Republican again. And while we're at it, we might as well talk about more losses that seem to be bad. In the California District 22 special election, Lauren Hubbard sadly lost. In California District 37, Daniel Lee seems to have lost. See, I don't know necessarily if he has lost yet. It seems that he's in a close enough match with second place to potentially be in second place, and some of the results still haven't been finalized. But it's also at a point where it's like, I think maybe Daniel Lee is out of contention. Like, it seems like it's like 10,000 versus 9,000, so it's like 10, well, not exactly, but like 10,000 something and 9,000 something, so it's like technically there's a shot, but realistically it probably isn't. In California District 46, there was a guy by the name of Mike Ortega, and he lost, which is weird because Our Revolution jumped into the race literally at the last second. So it's like, why did you jump in the last second? He didn't even get like close to being in the second round. With all these losses that seem to be bad, you might say, well, definitely it does look pretty bad. To which I tell you, you're the reason why the left loses. Because there's always a bright side. There are a lot of progressives who did make it to the second round. Some that might not win, but we might like it regardless. Rishi Kumar, Derek Marshall, Angelica Dunas, and maybe a girl. Those four might not win, but they'll make it to the second round, and they'll be able to put up a good fight in the second round. In California 42, there's the candidate that is leading is a guy by the name of Robert Garcia. And Robert Garcia, while he seems to have like this weird thing. I think he's like one of those guys who's like endorsed by like that weird pack. He seems to be pretty progressive, all things considered. He could be like one of those guys that's like says progressive things but then governs a bit differently. But as of now, it looks like him being in Congress wouldn't be that quite bad, especially considering that area is like a safe blue area, I think. But of course, I saved the two biggest ones for last. Two pieces of Asian pride that are probably going to be progressive saving grace in California. First, in California District 34, David Kim managed to make it to round 2, which is good because David Kim was the one person that a lot of progressives were actually holding out on in California District 34 because it's like his race, it like seeped into the next week. Like his congressional race was the only one in California that wasn't called on election day, I think. And it was basically everybody was saying like, could David Kim pull through? And David Kim did get really close to beating Jimmy Gomez, but of course it didn't pan out. But he got close, and it was closer than the person who ran before him, who he worked for. And people were basically saying like, hey, one more election and we could probably get rid of Jimmy Gomez. But speaking of the person who ran before David, this is an election result I literally did not see coming. In an absolutely stunning upset, Kenneth Mejia got first place in the LA controller seat. Kenneth Mejia, one of the OG Bernie to Green people, the guy that I predicted would be the saving grace for the Green Party before he DM'd me saying I'm not in the Green Party anymore. I literally slept on his campaign for many reasons. Like, I don't live in LA, it's not a like nationwide seat. It wasn't even like LA mayor, like something somewhat high profile. It was the controller seat. He was running against a pretty prominent city council member, so it was like, is he gonna win? But sure enough, he got first place. This is honestly, bravo to Kenneth. I literally did not expect that to happen. And like, I was literally floored when I looked up the results. Like, I saw like Populism Updates like post something about Kenneth Mejia's results, and then I went to look them up. Like, oh yeah, Kenneth Mejia was running in like the something. I don't know what he was running for, controller, whatever. Like, he was running for something. I don't remember what. And then I looked up the results, and I was expecting like, oh, he got like a close third, or maybe he made it to the second round, so maybe he has a shot. But then it's like he got first. And it's by a pretty decent margin, too. Kenneth Mejia's vote total is 101,246 to the city council members' 67,364. It's a pretty decent margin, all things considered. I might actually have to end up endorsing him with that numbers because it's like, dude, he has a shot and we could pull through. And while I was recording this, some of the results of the Alaska election did come in, so I'm going to have to give a little bit of subtext on that. Apparently, here's the current vote totals of the candidates. It's Sarah Palin, Nick Begich, Al Gross, and Mary Petula, but it's only with 35% of the vote. Santa has a close margin of getting in the top 4, so it's actually kind of possible. Like, I mean, after Kenneth Mejia actually managed to get first place, literally anything is possible. Yeah, sure, Santa Claus could be a member of Congress, whatever. I guess this is a good segue to talk about the main topic of this video. We're going to be talking about a person by the name of Jreg, or Junior Egg, or Jreg, or, as his parents called him, Greg Guevara. I honestly wasn't sure if I was even going to make a video on him, but I am. This is a person who seems to have this really interesting divide. Like a lot of political figures, some people love him and some people hate him. But the reason why is actually probably not what you would expect. Jreg started their internet YouTube history in 2009, posting basically just like sketch or like comedy videos for like school projects and such. Sometimes he'd post like musical content and like basically it was just like a thing that he'd post stuff on that he felt like it. His channel really wouldn't become prevalent until 2019 when he uploaded a video titled The Political Compass Rap, which was another one of his song videos, and that song, of course, dealt with the political compass, where he played like personified versions of the 4 quadrants of the political aisle: the authoritarian rightist, also known as the Nazi; the authoritarian leftist, also known as the communist; the libertarian leftist, also known as the ANCOM; and the libertarian rightist, also known as the ANCAP. And he made like really stereotypical jokes about them, like, you know, like for the authoritarian leftist, he was like, "Oh, I hate the capitalists, and they will be put in the gulag." And for like the authoritarian rightist, he'd be like, "I'm going to gas you." For the libertarian leftist, he'd be like, "I'm gonna bash the fascist head." And the libertarian rightist would be like, "I can use all these slaves? Yes, cool." It was pretty low quality, actually. Like I mean, the music was fine, but it's like, the idea is obviously that it was supposed to be like something really low quality. Basically none of them actually like have any real, like, the biggest effort really comes from the libertarian rightist and the communist, because like he has to put the star on the hat of the communist, and he had to buy those sunglasses. Well, even then, the glasses probably, well, it's a suit. Like, he wore a nice suit. The other two are literally just like a button-up shirt and a hoodie. And, you know, it was just like, oh yeah, that's funny. But then that one blew up like crazy, because that was around the time of like where the political compass era was sort of ending, but then it was entering this sort of different era. Like when 2016 election ended, and like when it was like gearing up and ending, like that was when the political compass really started taking off. Like everybody was like looking at the political compass for their political values. But then in 2018, that was like 2018, 2019, that was like people were officially getting tired of the political compass, except for like certain areas of the internet. And that was like where we got something called the Pol Comp Ball. Political compass balls existed for a while, but like the political compass itself started being taken less seriously, and as such, a lot of like people, like mostly teenagers and young adults, basically decided that they were going to make their, like, all the ideologies into specific little balls and have them like do jokes and stuff, being a spawn of the country ball movement, which spawned its own little like subsection called the country humans. But this one would be like focused on the political ideologies. But the thing is, like, of course, nobody really takes it seriously. Like, it's all just a bunch of like edgy kids goofing around. So like, of course, like all the Asian ones have like squinted eyes, the countries and the political ideologies, and like of course, all of the ones of like different ethnicities very heavily rely on their stereotypes. There's also a lot of shipping and like edgelord stuff that happens. Like, of course, there are going to be a lot of people who admire like the Nazi flag country and people who admire like the communist country. And for the Polcom balls, you know, they do the same for like the ideologies. But the thing is, like, they all like pal around, you know, like joke around and such. And of course, this guy, Jreg, basically just made personifications of the political ideology balls. So a lot of people gravitated towards his content as well, basically taking his interpretations of these 4 political ideologies and just agreeing, basically, yeah, this is what they'd look like and this is what they'd act like. This propelled Jreg to make more videos in this sort of format. But of course, one of the biggest things that was asked after he said, like, this original video was like, but what are your actual political ideologies? Like, what's your actual political beliefs? So Jreg made a video explaining that his political ideology was a very simple one. His ideology is anti-centrism. For those who do not know what anti-centrism is, we all know what centrism is, right? It's the center. So anti-centrism is literally everything except the center. That, of course, leads you to go, like, okay, that's obviously not like an actual ideology. Like, that can't work. Like, you can't be like communist, fascist, like ANCOM, ANCAP. Like, you can't be all those things. And that's, of course, the joke. Now, while that can be funny, there's a little bit of a problem. Jreg decided, I'm going to take that one joke and just keep going with it, deciding to create a web series called Centricide with something called Centricides to go along with it, to basically explain this story of like these four ideologies of completely opposing beliefs trying to work together to try and stop the centrists under Jreg, their leader, the leader of anti-centrism. Along the way, they make a bunch of other ideology friends, jokes, and whatever ensues. Now, the thing is, that whole premise is kind of mixed. On one end, it's like, I guess that technically can work if you make like a thing where it's like a bunch of these ideologies go together to like try and talk and all this other jazz. That can work, but there's some problems with it. Like, again, like, we don't know Jreg's actual political beliefs. Like, multiple times he's quote-unquote stated what they are, like anti-centrism. He's like sometimes said like, oh, I'm obviously a centrist, duh, that's the joke. He keeps saying like, on this milestone I'm going to reveal my real political ideology, and then whenever he says something, like whenever he passes it and he says what his ideology is, almost immediately afterwards he'll contradict it. So again, it's like, what is it? If he doesn't actually want to say what his ideology is, that's one thing, but it's like, if you're not going to say it, then don't like keep saying you're going to say it then. Another reason why it's somewhat of a problem that he doesn't like actually say what his ideology is that a lot of his followers are more than likely people who are like in that age range to be into like the polycumpa ball type thing. Like, if you're actually like really into it, and like the country ball and the country human type things, if you're really into it, there's a good chance you're like a kid. And those people, like, there's a reason why they idealize the Nazi character, because it's like, we're not supposed to. And that's sort of the same thing with this, like, centricide. Like, of course people like idealize the Nazi character because it's like, he's literally one of the four main characters. And he's the edgy one. Like, he's the one that you're not supposed to like. But I'm also not going to be one of those people that necessarily faults him for having a Nazi character. Because, like, there are a lot of people who would probably say, like, having this Nazi character just be with the rest of the centricide characters definitely seems sus. But it's like, I mean, you kind of have to. Like, if you're going to make it like it's like the polycumpa ball or the, like, country ball. Like, it's like, you can't necessarily not have them around. And Jreg does, like, regularly poke fun at the guy, but he also regularly pokes fun of, like, all the ideologies. And it's, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's, like, sometimes it's weird, because some people, like, I think Vosh stated this when he, like, talked about Jreg, like, way back in the day. It's, like, Vosh didn't like the fact that he puts, like, all of these ideologies on, like, a level playing field, and basically says, like, look, all these guys are essentially equal, everybody. Because, of course, we don't like, a lot of people don't necessarily see those ideologies as equal. Some people see, like, one of those ideologies as inherently worse than the rest. Like, I put that green square really high up in the world. That green square is amazing. Everybody loves the green square. But those other 4 squares, well, 5 squares technically, because of the purple and yellow debate with the political compass. But funnily enough, like, one of the interesting things is, like, I think Jreg actually took note of that, because that's sort of talked about a little bit in, like, the latter centricides. Like, I mean, I was actually expecting, like, going into this series, like, I was either going to end up actually becoming, like, a huge Jreg fan, or I would truly, like, be, like, I hate Jreg. Jreg is, like, the worst person ever. But honestly, it's, like, I mean, I see the faults in some of what Jreg does, I guess, but I also don't necessarily see, like, all the big problems. Like, I guess one thing is that his content has technically, like, I mean, I hate to say it, like, he fell off. Like, I mean, I watched, like, for this series, I actually decided to, like, I was planning to, like, watch a bunch of his stuff, but it's, like, I ended up only being able to watch Centricide, like, the main Centricide storyline. It wasn't really that funny. Like, I mean, I laughed at some things, but it wasn't really that funny. But I did genuinely like it. Like, I like the idea of, like, I like it when a creator just decides, like, screw it, I'm just gonna do this big thing, and if you don't like it, oh well. If I wanted to do it, I like the song Leftist Unity, and I've listened to the other songs in Centricide, and they're not bad. Jreg clearly knows what he's doing, but, like, with the finale of Centricide, Jreg has essentially kind of, like, put some of the political content on the background. It's like, he did it for, like, 2019, 2020, 2021. This is the end of the first Drera. And now his, like, new, like, joke sphere is, like, making fun of, like, mental illnesses. Like, he has this, like, little tiny series where he, like, talks about, like, mental illness, but then, like, we'll use the videos to, like, basically personify those mental illnesses. Like, he'll be, like, one, like, hi, I'm depression, and then, like, the whole video will, like, basically be, like, you stink, kill yourself, whatever. Schizophrenia will be, like, hi, I'm schizophrenia, and then, like, there'll be, like, a bunch of, like, visions and, like, words bumbling around. But this one, like, one actually ended up being, like, incredibly controversial, and that was his one in regards to epilepsy, because I'm just going to play the audio because I can't play the video, because this is an audio show. I could play the video, but you'll see why I don't play the video.
So there's this app called CSafe you can install to Google Chrome, and it will warn you ahead of time if flashing lights appear on a YouTube video. I find it a little trigger happy, but you can set it to either low, best, or high. You can play around with the settings depending on whatever's good for you. It pauses the video right before the flashing lights play. I'd recommend you try it out if you don't have anything protecting you from YouTube videos, if you're photosensitive. Hopefully this really helps any photosensitive people in my audience.
Now, since I only played the audio, you might not necessarily understand why that video is controversial. First, that probably requires a little bit of explanation for those who don't know what epilepsy is. For those who don't know, epilepsy is a disorder where you're extremely sensitive to, like, flashing lights and such. If you are exposed to, like, flashing lights to a certain degree, you might actually end up having an epileptic seizure. Something that's very, very serious and very, very bad. Well, in that little segment I played, there were, like, a lot of, like dinging noises, you know, like little bells or, like, little, like, video game noises. Well, picture for every little video game noise, there was a bright flashing light, each of a different color. Yeah, one of the biggest problems that many people have levied to Jreg is that he's so ironic and, like, so, like, into, like, the dark, like, deep irony that it's like, wait, what are you actually doing? Like, if you spend so much of your time ironically watching, like, a kid's show, it's like, at one point, doesn't stop being ironic. Like, how deep is it for it to stop being a joke into being, like, actually malicious? Now, just because he's also now talking about, like, mental illnesses and stuff, don't think politics videos has gone away. Like, no. He has actually been talking about, like, he's still been, like, dabbling in political content, and he's actually managed to do a couple of collaborations. The three biggest ones is, like, where he tries to do something with a different political, like, with a different YouTuber. The three I'm thinking of is, first, where he tries to radicalize the YouTuber 2Mad. For those who have no clue who 2Mad is basically just, like, an edgy African-American creator. You know, he'll scream racial slurs at the top of his lungs, dance shirtless, make, like, funny voices. You know, he's pretty funny. But he does have, like, a very, like, somewhat benign political views. Like, I mean, there was, like, just moments where he's literally just like, liberals know what's best. And then, like, but there is one political view that he has that he doesn't want the audience to know, but it's pretty obvious what it is. I think given the context clues, we can piece together what his political views on the issue is. Like, he literally took the political compass test, and then, like, when it got to the abortion question, he refused to answer it on camera. He literally was just like, can I just skip this question? And then when he revealed that he couldn't skip it, he changed the video to be him, like just him full screen, and then he chose his answer, and then he went back to, like, normal screen right after the page changed. So, like, I mean, it's pretty obvious what his opinion on the issue is. Look, edgelords make dead baby jokes. Do you really think that if he was pro-choice, he wouldn't have said that. But anyways, in that video, he basically said, he was basically like sitting in a room with Tumad trying to convert him into anti-centrism. And then Tumad is just like super confused at Jreg's political views because, again, that's the joke. The joke is that these views can't work. But Jreg's like, no, this is a very serious political ideology. Then he did another one with a collaboration with a Canadian YouTuber who dabbles in politics called JJ McAuliffe. But his video was literally just like, so why is centrism good? And then literally every time JJ McAuliffe talks, he fast forwards it because it's centrist gobbledygook. And then there was another video where he collaborated with Lauren Southern, where he said, like, I'm going to de-platform Lauren Southern. And then he said, hey, Lauren Southern, can you stand on this platform? And then she stands on it, and then he tries to kick it out from under her, and he says, there you go, I de-platformed you. And they just did an interview. Again, like, at what level is this, like, serious, and at what level is this not serious? Honestly, I guess I should have, I think I actually did kind of expect it to turn out this way. It's like, Jreg is just, like, a mixed bag. Like, I don't hate him, I don't like him. He's just there. I never really got the point. Like, honestly, like, it's like, the joke is just overdone. Like, get new material, man, I guess. I don't look at Jreg and think, like, oh, he's, like, the worst content creator in the history of political YouTube. But I also don't look at him as, like, he's, like, this cutting-edge, like, humor guy. Because, like, I think we've all made these jokes already. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when the video comes out. And if you need some more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, check out my articles on the Independent Political Report, or consider supporting me on Patreon.